He strode in with a loan folder and a strict deadline. I just poured his coffee, but I was also unlocking a vault he didn't know existed. He thought my signature was the only thing that could save him. Instead, that signature was about to reveal a deed he had never seen, and a landlord he never imagined. He wanted my name on his debt. He left learning whose name was on his house. My name is Evelyn Carver. I am 62 years old, a widow, and I live in a quiet, humid corner of Savannah, Georgia. My days are orderly. I work part-time at the Marigold Care Cooperative, a desk job managing schedules and logistics, and I prefer the clean, solvable problems it offers. That order ended when my son, Dylan, let himself into my kitchen without knocking. Dylan, at 35, is a man of relentless, failed ambition. He is always on the verge of the next big thing, which always requires rescuing from the last big thing. Today, he brought the smell of expensive cologne and desperation into my house. He didn't bother with hello. He just dropped a heavy, spiral-bound folder onto my granite countertop. Mum, I need you to co-sign. I looked at the cover. Southline Fleet and Logistics. Another new company name. I turned the first page. Dylan, this is a commercial loan application for $450,000. It's just a formality. Mum, he said, waving a dismissive hand. He was already pacing between the counter and the refrigerator. Too much energy for the room. The deal is solid. I just need the bridge financing. I'll have it all paid back in 90 days. I poured a cup of coffee I had just brewed, my hand perfectly steady. And if you don't... His jaw tightened. Don't start. Don't make this difficult. We're family. I'm telling you it's fine, so just trust me. Unless you want things in this family to get really ugly. The threat, casual but sharp, settled in the air between us. I took a sip of coffee. Ugly is defaulting on $500,000, I said evenly. Where is the balance sheet? What are the cash flow projections? Who are the other guarantors? It's all in there, he snapped, gesturing at the folder. The projections are sound. I had a partner, and he betrayed me. Pulled his funding at the last second. It's not my fault. I just need you to cover the guarantee. He dodged the last question. No other guarantors. His phone began buzzing on the countertop, vibrating aggressively against the granite. It buzzed again, and then a third time. I could see the name on the screen. Brianna, his wife. I didn't need to read the texts to understand their content. I knew the social pressure they were under, the leased luxury cars, the private school wait lists, the crushing weight of the image they had to maintain for their friends. Dylan glanced at the phone, and the pressure from his wife seemed to transfer directly to him. His frustration boiled over, aimed at me. Just sign the damn thing, Mum. This house was supposed to be mine when Dad died anyway. There it was. The entitlement, spoken aloud. The belief that this house, my home, the one I had maintained and paid for, was just a line item he was waiting to inherit. He saw my silence as weakness. I pushed the heavy folder back toward him. I will need to read the papers before I sign anything. Read. He laughed, a short, sharp, ugly sound. I don't have time for you to read. The bank needs this signature by 5 p.m. today. Are you going to do this or not? He didn't wait for an answer. He grabbed his sunglasses, leaving the folder where it was. A financial bomb left on my kitchen table. The front door slammed, rattling the porcelain on the shelves. I stood in the silence. listening to the hum of the refrigerator. I waited a full 5 minutes, until I was sure his car was gone from the driveway. Then I walked to the study. I moved the framed print of the sago palm, revealing the small wall safe. My fingers, practiced and sure, spun the combination lock. The mechanism clicked open. Inside, behind my husband's old watch, lay a thick manila envelope, sealed with wax. On the front, in my own handwriting, were 2 words, Copperleaf Land Trust, and below that, confidential. I pulled the envelope out, its weight familiar in my hands. I picked up my phone. My lawyer, May Delacroix, answered on the second ring. "May," I said, looking at the seal on the envelope. "It's Evelyn. It's time." I didn't wait. I scanned every page of Dylan's thick application and emailed the secured PDF to May. Her call came back in less than 15 minutes. Her voice, always sharp, cut through the speakerphone. "Evelyn, this isn't a loan application," May said. "It's a trap. Page 9, the cross-default clause. If he misses one payment on any of his other debts, this entire $450,000 becomes due immediately. And the interest rate. It's adjustable. And it's predatory. He's asking you to co-sign to use this house as extended collateral. He's not asking for help. He's asking you to wager your home on his failure. He claims Southline Fleet has $300,000 in receivables," I said, my voice flat, tracing the number on the page. "I've already searched it," May replied instantly. "The bank statements he attached are polished. Look at the accounting firm that supposedly audited them Eastport Ledger Works. It's a mailbox service in a strip mall. It doesn't exist. Evelyn? He's faked the revenue. He is actively committing bank fraud." The air in my kitchen felt thick and cold, as if summoned. My phone lit up on the counter. A voice note from Brianna. I pressed play, and her strained, whispering voice filled the room. "Evelyn, please, just sign it. He's under so much pressure. He's just trying to provide for us. For the kids. Please. For the children. We're counting on you." The message ended. I stared at the phone. She had conveniently ignored the text I sent her an hour ago asking about their mounting credit card debt. The manipulation was layered so deep, they probably believed it themselves. I put the phone down and made a second call, this one to an old friend. "Tamsin, it's Evelyn Carver." "Evelyn." Officer Tamsin O'Rourke's voice crackled. "Good to hear from you, though it usually means trouble. What's going on?" "I have a strange request. My son, Dylan, is involved in a new business, Southline Fleet and Logistics. Can you see if there have been any strange calls or complaints associated with him or that name lately? Anything unusual?" "I'll see what's shaking. Give me an hour," she said, and the line clicked. I didn't need Tamsin to confirm the pattern. I was the one who set it. 3 years ago, it was a revolving line of credit for a different startup. He had hounded me, pressured me, worn me down until I finally signed, just to stop the awful, relentless fighting. When that company imploded 6 months later, I was the one who quietly paid off the $75,000. I told myself I was saving the family from embarrassment. In truth, I had only bought his silence, and in doing so, I had funded his next failure. "Evelyn, are you ready?" May's voice brought me back to the present. "I am," I said, my resolve hardening. "Then let's review our assets," May said. "The Copperleaf Land Trust. We established it 6 years ago. right after Graham's brother started making noise about the will, claiming Dylan should be the sole heir. "I remember," I said. "The sole managing entity of that trust is a limited liability company. Do you remember the name? Palmetto Key Properties, LLC. And the sole member of Palmetto Key Properties, me," I said. It was the cleanest, quietest legal maneuver of my life. After my husband, Graham, died. And I realized how financially vulnerable he had left me, and how entitled he had made our son May structured it. It was a single quitclaim deed, transferring the house from my name directly into the Copperleaf Land Trust. We filed it on the day before Thanksgiving, a court holiday when the county recorder's office was nearly empty. We used a specialized trust service address based in Atlanta, not Savannah. It was recorded, finalized, and legally buried in the public records before anyone was back from the long weekend. Dylan, obsessed with what he believed was his impending inheritance, never thought to check the actual deed. He never knew. He's still completely blind. "Evelyn," May said, and I could hear the rare satisfaction in her voice. "What do you mean?" "I just confirmed it with the county tax assessor's office. The property tax bills. Where are they addressed?" I pictured the beige envelope that had arrived just last month. "They just say, Carver Residence, at my address." "Exactly," May said. "We never changed the mailing address for the tax bill. It's the only correspondence he ever sees regarding the house, as long as those bills show up addressed to the Carver residence. He assumes the house is still tied to his father's name, that it's his birthright. He has no idea he's asking for a signature. He's about to find out he's just a tenant." I looked at the heavy loan packet still sitting on my table. It was a tangible link to a past I thought I had buried. My late husband, Graham Carver, had adored the language of finance. He spoke of tax optimization and leveraging assets with a passion he rarely showed for anything else. He managed our money, and in doing so, he managed me. Our marriage was a quiet, 20-year lesson in financial subservience. I remembered a day, perhaps 15 years ago, when he slid a document across the same kitchen table. "Evelyn, I need your signature here," he'd said, tapping the line. "It's just a general power of attorney. It will make it easier for me to handle the refinancing paperwork without you having to come to the bank." I had reached for the pen, but May, who was just a friend then and visiting for coffee, caught my eye. Her look was sharp, a silent warning. Later, after he left, May told me, "Never sign a POA unless you know exactly what it's for, and always keep a copy for yourself." Graham was annoyed by the delay, but I'd insisted on getting a copy for my records. He'd rolled his eyes, but he had his assistant make one. I kept that copy hidden in a recipe box for a decade. It was the first document I ever kept for myself. When Graham died, the control he'd exerted didn't die with him. It simply transferred. His older brother, sensing a vacuum, sat me down and explained that it was Graham's clear wish that the house be put in Dylan's name immediately. "It's the only way to protect the family assets. Evelyn," he'd insisted, patting my hand. "Just a formality to protect Dylan's inheritance from estate taxes." They all saw me as a simple widow, a secretary at a cooperative, someone who wouldn't understand the complex world of deeds and trusts. They expected me to grieve, nod, and sign. I grieved. I nodded, and I said nothing. Instead, I took that old, folded power of attorney, the one Graham had me sign, to May Delacroix, who was now my lawyer. That document, along with Graham's will, became the foundation of my escape. May and I worked quietly. We used the very tools of financial control that Graham had prized, but we used them for my liberation. We established the Copperleaf Land Trust. I didn't just sign the papers May prepared, I made her teach me. I learned what a quitclaim deed was. I learned to read a cadastral map. I sat in the county recorder's office for hours, tracing lot numbers and page codes, understanding the chain of title. I learned what it meant to have lifetime residency rights and, more importantly, the sole right to lease or foreclose. I went from being a wife who was handed an allowance to a woman who understood exactly how her property was zoned, titled, and protected. When Dylan came to me 3 years ago with that first disastrous loan, the one for $75,000, I was still operating under the old rules. I paid it off in secret. I told myself I was protecting the family name, avoiding the shame. I saw the truth only after the check cleared. Dylan wasn't grateful. He was relieved. He didn't see my payment as a sacrifice. He saw it as an expectation. My help hadn't saved him. It had simply reinforced the lesson his father had taught him that my resources were his safety net. I looked at the new application on my table. $450,000. This wasn't a request for help. A co-signature is a financial noose, disguised as a family obligation. The moment you sign it, you sign away your right to ever say no again. You are not co-signing. You are co-sinking. I promised myself, standing there in the quiet of my kitchen, that I would never again pay to stop a fight. I would not sacrifice my home, the only thing I truly owned, for his pride. This time, I would not be signing. I hadn't told Dylan. I hadn't even told May yet. But the decision was made. The fight he wanted to avoid was the only thing that could save us. The clock on the kitchen wall showed 2:45 p.m. The humidity of the Savannah afternoon was pressing in, but I felt perfectly cool. Right on schedule. A polite doorbell chime. It wasn't a courier. It was a young man named Grant Wilder from Coastline Metro Bank, the loan officer himself. He wore a navy suit that was too tight in the shoulders and a smile that was even tighter. He was carrying a thin leather portfolio. Mrs. Evelyn Carver, he said, offering a damp hand. I'm Grant Wilder. I just wanted to personally walk you through the final signature pages, just to explain the procedure and offer some reassurance. Reassurance. That was the word bankers used when they wanted you to ignore the fine print. I led him to the kitchen table, the site of the morning's confrontation. He sat, opened his portfolio, and slid a single document toward me, angled for my signature. It was a risk disclosure. It's really just standard procedure. Mrs. Carver, he said, tapping a paragraph with his pen. Because you are the co-signer. This just confirms that in the event of a loan default, the bank reserves the right to place a secondary lien on this property. It's what we call cross-collateral. It's standard. We are very confident in Dylan's projections. Of course. He smiled again, trying to appear collegial. And besides, he was very clear with us. Dylan explained the whole situation, that he is the beneficial owner of this property by his father's intent. So, we're really just treating this as him leveraging his own future assets. I let the silence settle in the humid kitchen. I offered him a small, polite smile. His father's intent. How interesting. I reached into the simple kitchen drawer next to me. the one where I keep appliance warranties and spare twist ties. I pulled out a single, folded photocopy. "Mr. Wilder," I said, my voice quiet. "When your bank was performing its due diligence on this $450,000 loan, did your underwriters happen to pull the current chain of title for this address?" I unfolded the paper and slid it across the table. It was a copy of the quitclaim deed, clearly showing the property transfer from Evelyn Carver to the Copperleaf Land Trust, dated 6 years prior. Grant Wilder's practiced smile did not fade. It froze, then cracked. He picked up the paper. He read the legal description. He read the grantee Copperleaf Land Trust. He read the date. The blood drained from his face, leaving a pasty, grey sheen under his mild sunburn. I don't understand," he stammered. "The application lists this as the Carver residence." "It is the Carver residence," I agreed, my hands folded. "But it is owned by Palmetto Key Properties, LLC, as trustee for the trust. I'm surprised your underwriting team missed that." "This is just a copy," he said, his voice rising an octave. He was looking at me, but he was seeing a compliance nightmare. I need to make a call. Excuse me." He scrambled to his feet, fumbling for his phone, and hurried onto the back patio. I watched through the screen door as he paced, his gestures becoming frantic, his voice a low, panicked buzz. I looked at the kitchen clock. 3:15 p.m. The deadline was less than 2 hours away. I picked up my own phone and sent a simple text message to May Delacroix. "Bring the originals, and please call the deputy clerk at the Chatham County Recorder's office. It's time." At 4:30, a different car screeched into my driveway. It was Dylan, and he was not alone. He burst through the front door, his face a mask of rage. Brianna followed him, looking terrified, and flanked by 2 large men in expensive, ill-fitting suits. His partners. They were here for intimidation. They crowded into my living room, filling the space with the smell of hostile cologne. Grant Wilder was still on the porch, his tie now loosened, his face slick with sweat. "Mom!" Dylan roared, pointing a finger at me. "What did you do? The bank is pulling the loan?" "Grant, tell her." He advanced toward me. "I don't know what game you're playing, but it ends now. Just sign the damn paper." I stood in the center of my living room, the 4 of them forming a tight, angry semicircle around me. I felt perfectly calm. "Dylan, honey," I said, my voice cutting cleanly through his anger. "Today, I'm not signing. I'm announcing." As the words left my mouth, the doorbell rang again, clear, sharp, and undeniable. Dylan's rage vibrated in the small entryway. "What did you do? Who is this?" "I called my lawyer," I said. Opening the door wider, May Delacroix entered, all sharp angles and composed energy, carrying a black document case. Behind her, a man in a pale blue polo shirt bearing the Chatham County insignia held a clipboard. He looked nervous, but professional. "Evelyn," May said, her voice clear and cutting. "This is Mr. Fields, a deputy clerk from the recorder's office. He is here as a public observer." Dylan, Brianna, and the 2 looming partners stepped back as May and Mr. Fields entered the kitchen. Grant Wilder, the loan officer, was still plastered against the patio door, watching. May walked to the kitchen table, the one Dylan had pounded on that morning. She placed her case on the wood and clicked the 2 metal latches. The sound echoed in the silent, humid room. "Good afternoon," May said, addressing the room. My client, Evelyn Carver, has asked me to clarify the ownership status of this property before this 5 p.m. deadline. She opened the case and removed the first document. The paper was thick. The original? The sound of it unfolding seemed impossibly loud. Document 1, May announced, placing it squarely on the table. A quitclaim deed, executed and recorded 6 years ago. It legally transfers this property, in its entirety, from Evelyn Carver, an individual, to the Copperleaf Land Trust. She placed the second document next to it. Document 2, an assignment of beneficial interest, signed by Graham Carver, your father, 3 weeks before his death. It assigns his remaining 99% interest in the trust's managing entity, Palmetto Key Properties, LLC, directly and solely to Evelyn. Then, the third, and document 3, the operating agreement for Palmetto Key Properties, LLC, which, as you can see, lists Evelyn Carver as the sole member and manager, holding the exclusive right to manage, lease, or encumber this property. Mr. Fields stepped forward, adjusting his glasses. He looked at his clipboard. Ma'am, Mr. Fields, May prompted. Would you please confirm the public record? Yes, ma'am, he said, his voice reciting the facts. I pulled the records this afternoon. The deed to Copperleaf Land Trust was recorded on November 21st, 6 years prior. Book 472, page 189. The chain of title is clean. The owner of record for this parcel is the trust. Grant Wilder made a low, strangled sound. He finally understood. His bank's $450,000 loan was based on fraudulent collateral. He had been underwriting a fantasy. Without this house, the risk profile changed completely. The loan was dead, and he was the one who had failed to check the title. No. Dylan's voice cracked. He lunged toward the table. That's not right. He promised me Dad wanted this house to be mine. He told me. We anticipated that, May said, her voice devoid of emotion. She reached back into her case and pulled out one final sheet, this one protected in a plastic sleeve. It was a handwritten letter. This is a letter, drafted by my office and signed by Graham. It acknowledges his previous verbal wishes regarding the house, and in this letter, he formally revokes them. May read the key line aloud. My concerns regarding Dylan's financial judgment and his continued sense of entitlement compel me to rescind these prior verbal promises and place the asset under the sole and exclusive control of his mother. The room snapped into a cold, hard focus. Brianna turned on Dylan, her whisper venomous. You said it was ours. You told me the house was already ours. You lied to me. I watched my son's face collapse. I walked to the hook by the kitchen door, took down the spare set of house keys, returned to the table, and placed them quietly on top of the legal documents. Dylan, I said, you still have your old room, if you learn to respect the rules of my house. But ownership, that's what you learned today. The two partners, who had been silent, suddenly found the exit. One muttered, "We're out," and they filed out the front door, leaving it open. Grant Wilder was already packing his portfolio, the snaps clicking shut. I have to report this to my regional manager. We are formally withdrawing the loan offer due to title discrepancies. He didn't look at any of us as he fled. It was just family now, and the law. Dylan looked at the keys, at his wife, at me. The scaffolding of his life had just been kicked away. He did the only thing he had left. He roared, slamming both his fists onto the kitchen table, rattling the stack of deeds. "You can't do this? This is my house. My house." He raised his arm to sweep the documents, the proof, onto the floor. "I wouldn't," a new voice said, calm and firm. Officer Tamsin O'Rourke stood in the open doorway, her hand resting near her belt. She had been waiting, just as I'd asked. "Am I interrupting? Evelyn?" she asked. Dylan froze, his hand in the air. The sight of the uniform broke his tantrum instantly. "No, Tamsin," I said. "You're right on time." I looked at my son, breathing hard, a 35-year-old child trapped in the corner he had built for himself. "It's over. Dylan," I said. "You don't need a co-signer. You need discipline." Dylan did not return. He left in a spray of gravel, the sound of his truck's oversized engine fading into the humid savannah evening. He left his partners. He left the deadline. And he left Brianna, who was still standing by my kitchen counter, frozen. When May and Officer O'Rourke stepped outside to finalize their notes, Brianna's brittle composure finally fractured. She didn't move, but her voice dropped to a terrified, dry whisper. "Evelyn, he wasn't lying about the deadline." Her eyes were wide, fixed on the stack of deeds May had left on the table. "He owes rent on the warehouse for Southline. They're changing the locks tomorrow. And the supplier, the one from Atlanta, they're demanding payment up front. The lease on the Escalade is 3 weeks past due." She was reciting the inventory of their collapse. She looked at me, not as a mother-in-law, but as the last functioning lifeboat. I looked at her. This woman who had moments ago been complicit in an attempt to leverage my home. "Brianna?" I said, my voice quiet but not unkind. "Did you ever read the loan application, the one you sent me a voice note about, begging me to sign for the children?" She looked confused. "No. He just told me to call you." "It contained a cross-default clause," I said. I let the legal term hang in the air. "It means if he, or I, missed one single payment on that warehouse rent, or that supplier, or that car lease, the entire $450,000 would become due immediately. The bank would not have waited 90 days. They would have seized this house by the end of the month." The blood drained from her face. She finally understood. She had been begging me to sign a document that tied my financial survival directly to the debts she had just confessed. She, and her children, would have been just as homeless as I, only I would have been the one paying for their mistakes. My phone buzzed on the counter. It was the family group chat. A message from my late husband's sister, Karen. "Evelyn, what did you do? Dylan is a mess. You humiliated him in front of his business partners. You are shaming this family. Your father would be appalled." I picked up the phone, read the message, and then placed the phone face down on the granite counter without replying. May returned, her expression assessing Brianna's silent panic. "Brianna?" May said, her voice all business. "Evelyn will not be giving you, or Dylan, any money. That avenue is permanently closed. She will not be paying for the warehouse, the suppliers, or the Escalade." Brianna flinched, but May continued. "However, she is willing to offer help, a very specific kind of help." May outlined a plan, an escrow education agreement. I would place a small amount of money into a trust account managed by May's firm. Those funds could not be touched by Brianna. They could only be used to pay for 2 things: a certified financial literacy course and sessions with a career counselor. We suggest the program at the Savannah Women's Resource Hub, May said. It's discreet and it's practical. But you must enroll yourself, and you must complete the course. Brianna stared at the floor, the humiliation warring with the first flicker of genuine relief. She gave a single, sharp nod. Yes, okay, I will. The aftershocks continued through the evening. A formal email arrived from Dylan, forwarded to me by his new, hastily acquired lawyer. It was full of bluster, threatening to sue to contest the validity of the trust and honor the original intent of the will. I forwarded it to May. Her reply, which she copied me on, was a masterpiece of polite, legal finality. Dear Mr. Carver, thank you for your correspondence. Please find attached the complete, recorded chain of title for the property in question, along with the notarized revocation of intent signed by your father. We trust this clarifies the matter. Any further frivolous litigation will be met with a countersuit for costs and legal fees. Regards, May Delacroix. An hour later, I received one final call. It was not from family. It was from a regional vice president at Coastline Metro Bank. He sounded exhausted. Mrs. Carver, he said. I am calling to offer my profound apologies. I have reviewed the file, and I am appalled at the gross oversight in our underwriting process. Mr. Wilder's failure to perform a basic title search is unacceptable. I assure you, we are handling it internally. The loan application has been officially denied, and the file is permanently closed. That night, after Brianna had called a rideshare to take her home, I stood in the quiet of my house. It was the first time in years it felt truly mine. I called a 24-hour locksmith and had every single deadbolt and lock on the property changed. While he worked, I finally installed the video doorbell I had bought 6 months ago, but had never taken out of the box. As I tested the camera, watching the clear digital image of my front porch appear on my phone, I felt a profound sense of calm. I was not changing the locks because I was afraid. I was changing them because the boundary was now clear. I was no longer just the resident. I was the owner. And the doors were, finally, closed. It took 2 days. I was just back from my shift at the cooperative, the air heavy and still, when Dylan's truck pulled up. The new video doorbell chimed, a polite, digital sound. I watched him on my phone for a moment. He was leaning on the bell, insistent, not even trying the locked handle. I opened the door. He looked exhausted, smaller. But the arrogance had not fully evaporated. It had just curdled. He was here with a new strategy. Okay, he said, walking past me into the kitchen as if he still had the right. He didn't sit. I've been thinking, that trust thing, it's clever. Fine. You win that part. But you still want to help your family. It was not a question. It was a statement of fact. An old lever he believed still worked. I have a new deal, he said, turning to face me. A better one. You lease the house to me, just on paper. $1 a month. That gives me tenants' rights, and I can use the lease agreement to secure a mortgage against my interest in the property. I stared at him, my mind struggling to comprehend the depth of his delusion. He had learned nothing. He was still digging, still trying to find a legal loophole to steal my home. Dylan, I said, my voice flat and tired. The Copperleaf Land Trust, which owns this house, has a no encumbrance clause. It means the property cannot be used as collateral for any loan, by anyone, without the express written consent of the trustee. And the trustee, I added, Is May. You're just hiding behind her, he shouted, his composure finally cracking. You're trying to ruin me. You're enjoying this. You are doing this to yourself. Dylan. I've already done it, he spat, his face turning a dark, mottled red. The admission hung in the air, thick and toxic. I've been using this address for my business credit for the last year. Southline Fleet is registered here. What are you going to do now? Evict your own son's company. My blood ran cold. It wasn't just an attempt at fraud. It was established, ongoing fraud. He had been using my home as his financial shield long before he'd asked me to co-sign. I did not raise my voice. I did not move. I just said, "Get out of my house." He stared at me, perhaps expecting me to cry or scream. He did not expect the cold finality. He left, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the new lock. The moment it was quiet, I called May. Her reaction was not shock, but a cold, sharp intake of breath. He admitted it, Evelyn. That's mail fraud. That's wire fraud. He's registering a business at an address he has no claim to. What do we do? I asked, my hand trembling. First, you call Tamsin. Now. This has moved beyond a family dispute. I called Tamsin O'Rourke. Her voice was grim. Evelyn, you need to lock down your credit. I don't mean a fraud alert. I mean a full security freeze. Right now. Experian, TransUnion, Equifax. He's not just using your address. He's almost certainly using your name. I spent the next hour on hold with automated systems, my fingers fumbling on the keypad as I entered security codes, freezing the identity he was trying to leverage. The next escalation came from Brianna. A text message appeared on my phone later that afternoon. It was a picture, a screenshot of an invoice for a small batch logistics supplier. At the bottom was a signature line, supposedly signed by a minor investor, authorizing a shipment. Below the picture was Brianna's text. This isn't Mr. Henderson's signature. Dylan did it. He sent it to me to keep for records last month. I can't do this anymore. He was forging signatures. He was desperate. I called May back and told her about the signature. Nora Finch, May said immediately. She's the best bankruptcy attorney in Savannah. Brianna needs to see her. She's not just a spouse. She's a co-conspirator if she stays silent. I'm setting up a meeting for her, and you're paying for the consultation. Chapter 13, Chapter 7. I asked, the terms feeling foreign and sharp in my mouth. Nora will advise her on how to separate her finances before the entire structure collapses, May said, but the final, chilling move came in my own mailbox. Tucked between a utility bill and a catalogue was an official, windowed envelope from the United States Postal Service. It was a confirmation notice. Thank you for opening your new post office box. I had never opened a P.O. box in my life. He was trying to redirect my mail. He was trying to intercept bank statements, legal notices, perhaps even new credit cards he had applied for in my name. May was incandescent. That's it. That's a federal offense. What is the final step? May. The final step is this, she said, her voice like steel. I am going to the courthouse tomorrow. I am filing an affidavit of identity theft risk on your behalf. We are attaching the P.O. Box confirmation and the fraudulent business registration. We are creating a public, legal record that Dylan Carver is actively attempting to defraud his own mother. It's a layer of administrative protection. It flags your name in the county system. Dylan must have felt the legal and financial walls closing in. He must have known his avenues for manipulation were gone. So, he turned to the only weapon he had left. That night, my niece forwarded me a screenshot from Facebook. It was Dylan's post, a picture of him and his father, smiling on a boat. The caption read, "My mother, Evelyn, has stolen my father's house and my inheritance, based on the lies of a crooked lawyer. She is throwing her own family into the street, all alone. Please pray for her." Dylan's public performance on social media achieved its goal. The family was mobilized. My phone was a cascade of concerned, then confused, then judgmental texts from relatives I had not spoken to in months. They demanded an explanation for the shameful post. So I gave them one. I invited them for Sunday dinner. A frank conversation. I called it. My late husband's sister, Karen, and his brother, David, arrived together, their faces set in grim solidarity. Dylan and Brianna arrived last. Dylan walked in with a performance of weary martyrdom. Brianna just looked exhausted. I had made chicken. I let them fill their plates. I let them settle in my living room. I let them wait. Uncomfortable. While the new video doorbell camera, perfectly positioned on the entryway table, captured a clear, wide shot of the entire room. When the silence was stretched tight, I did not begin with an apology. I walked to the printer desk in the corner. I picked up 5 sheets of paper. "I've heard there is a lot of confusion about my actions," I began, my voice clear and calm. "I find that in times of confusion, clarity is the only solution. I've taken the liberty of writing down the new house rules, the boundaries, both personal and legal." I handed a sheet to each of them. Dylan, Brianna, Karen, David. I kept one for myself. They stared at the clean, typed page. Under the heading, Personal and Legal Boundaries, I had listed 3 simple points. 1, I will not co-sign, guarantee, or post collateral for any loan, debt, or line of credit. This decision is final and permanent. 2, this residential address, my home, will not be used, listed, or implied as a place of business, a corporate headquarters, or a mailing address for any entity I do not personally own. 3, any future instances of suspected fraud, identity theft, unauthorized credit applications, or mail tampering will be reported immediately to the relevant authorities. There will be no family discussion first. The silence in the room was absolute. It was Karen, my sister-in-law, who spoke first, her voice dripping with the pity she mistook for moral superiority. "Evelyn, this isn't a boundary. It's a declaration of war. It's cold. Graham built this family, and you are taking it apart with contracts. How can you be so selfish?" I looked at her, and for the first time, I felt nothing. No anger, no defensiveness, just clarity. "Karen," I replied, "protecting the roof that is legally mine is not selfish. It is responsible. For a decade, this family has confused financial enabling with love. I am simply stating that I will no longer participate in that confusion." My words landed. Dylan looked like he wanted to set the paper on fire. But it was Brianna who broke. She let out a low, choked sound, a sob she had been holding back for days. She was staring at the 3rd point, the one about reporting fraud. The tears began to fall, hot and fast, onto her own printed page. "It wasn't just him," she whispered, the words tumbling out. "It was me. My student loans. We never paid them off. They're over $100,000. Dylan shot her a look of pure venom, but she couldn't stop. The pressure, the other wives at the preschool, the vacations we had to post on social media. I just kept swiping. I told him we had to keep up. I'm the one who kept saying yes. I'm drowning. Evelyn. I am drowning. Dylan looked at his wife's confession not with compassion, but with disgust. I looked at Brianna. No, you're not, I said quietly. You're overwhelmed, but you are not drowning. I turned to her, excluding my son. I work at the Marigold Care Cooperative. We are desperate for administrative help. It's 20 hours a week. It does not pay what you are used to spending. But it has a full health insurance policy and a dental plan. The job is yours, if you want to start. It was a ladder, not a bailout. She stared at me, the shock of a practical solution silencing her tears. She doesn't need a part-time job. Dylan suddenly sneered, laughing. He waved my list of boundaries in the air. This is cute, Mom. Really? But you're too late. You and your little lawyer are playing checkers. He leaned forward, the old, familiar arrogance returning. I already secured the financing, a private lender, a bridge loan. He knows all about your little trust, and he doesn't care. He says it's just a soft mortgage. I just need one last thing from you, a simple homeowner's verification, just to confirm residency for my partner. He was, I realized, truly incapable of stopping. He would burn the house down just to prove he could. A private lender, I repeated. I reached back to my desk and picked up a single, sealed, business envelope. Does this private lender have a name? None of your business, he snapped. That's all right, I said. May already found him. I handed the envelope to Dylan. This is for you. A copy was already emailed to your lender this afternoon, just before dinner. He ripped it open. It was not a long letter. It was on May Delacroix's official letterhead. It was a formal notice of refusal and cease and desist. It identified May as the sole trustee of Copperleaf Land Trust and manager of Palmetto Key Properties, LLC. It stated, in unambiguous legal terms, that any attempt to encumber, lien, or otherwise leverage the property at this address would be met as an act of calculated, predatory fraud. It informed the lender that the trust would not honour any agreements, and that any further contact would be forwarded to the state's Financial Crimes Division. It was signed by May, as trustee. Dylan's face went from smug to confused to a pale, sickly white. He looked at me. He looked at his aunt and uncle, who were now staring at me with a new, terrified respect. The room was silent. Everyone, all at once, realized the exact same thing. The door was not just locked. The vault was empty. The money was gone. Dylan's defeat at the Sunday dinner did not lead to surrender. It led to recklessness. We found out a week later, not from him, but from the supplier he'd been courting. Apparently, Dylan had used the verbal approval from his private lender to order a small fleet of 5 utility vans. When the supplier called to arrange the down payment, the money, of course, was not there. The order was cancelled, and another one of Dylan's bridges was burned. His private lender, the one May had warned off, was not so easily dissuaded. He came to the house himself. I was at work at Marigold when it happened, but my new doorbell camera, which Tamsin had advised me to link to a cloud server, recorded everything. A large, black car pulled into my driveway. A man in a suit I could only describe as shiny got out and hammered on my new front door. He peered into the windows. He saw the small, laminated sign I had posted, the one May had printed for me. This property is held by the Copperleaf Land Trust. No trespassing. All activities are recorded. He looked directly into the camera lens, swore, and left. Tamsin O'Rourke received the video file 30 minutes later. May, in response, went on the offensive. She called it legal fortification. She filed 2 more documents with the county, making them irrefutable public record. First, a detailed affidavit of ownership and trust structure, a document that spelled out, in language a child could understand, that I was the resident, but Palmetto Key Properties, LLC, was the owner. Second, she filed a memorandum of trust, which she then had posted a legal term, meaning she had it physically attached to the public-facing deed record. It was a bright red flag for any title company or desperate lender who might come sniffing around. The house was secure. Now, it was time for the house to work for me, as the trust had always intended. In full accordance with the trust's operating agreement, I signed a short-term, 6-month lease for the upstairs guest suite. The new tenant was a travelling nurse, a single woman in her 40s with excellent references. She paid her first month's rent and a security deposit. The cheque was not made out to Evelyn Carver. It was made out to Palmetto Key Properties, LLC. That first cheque felt like the final lock clicking into place. With that new, legitimate income, I prepaid the property taxes for the next quarter, had a monitored security system installed, and put the rest into the LLC's new operating account. Brianna, meanwhile, had been moving in silence. 6 weeks after our Sunday dinner, having completed her financial literacy course at the Resource Hub, she made her choice. She had started the part-time job at Marigold, and with her first independent paycheck, she had hired Nora Finch. Nora immediately filed for a safe and legal separation, including an emergency financial protective order, locking Dylan out of the one joint bank account they had left. Brianna and the children moved into a small, rented apartment, the deposit paid for by the sale of her own jewellery. She was, for the first time, free. Dylan's world had completely disintegrated. His wife was gone, his children were gone, his lenders were gone, and his access to my assets was gone. All he had left was his rage. On a Thursday, a final letter arrived. It was not from a lawyer. It was from him, sent by certified mail. It was a rambling, furious, final demand that I return the house to him, as it was his father's dying wish. He was no longer trying to be clever. He was just raw, exposed, and desperate. May responded on my behalf, again, with a simple, cold quotation of the revocation clause Graham had signed. This time, Dylan didn't reply with a letter. He replied with a phone call. I let it go to voicemail. His voice was no longer arrogant or manipulative. It was flat, cold, and final. You've taken everything. You've stolen my whole life. I'm done asking. I am coming to the house. I am going to get what is mine. Be there. Sunday, 7 p.m. It was not a request. It was a threat. I called May. He's coming. I know, she said. And we will be ready. I'm calling Tamsin. I'm calling Mr. Fields from the recorder's office. And I'm bringing one more guest. This ends. Evelyn. This Sunday. At 7. At 7 p.m. on Sunday, the .com chime of the new doorbell echoed through the house. I watched on my phone monitor as Dylan stood on the porch, flanked by 2 men in suits that were too large, their expressions attempting intimidation. His associates. I opened the door. He tried to walk past me, But he stopped cold. My living room was prepared for a reckoning. May Delacroix stood by the fireplace, her document case open on the mantel. Brianna sat on the couch, not as his wife, but as my witness. And standing near the window, holding a neutral clipboard, was Mr. Flynn, the deputy clerk from the recorder's office, present as a public observer, just outside the open door, visible to everyone. Officer Tamsin O'Rourke stood, her arms crossed. "What is this?" Dillon sneered. "A party." "A clarification," I said. I motioned to the coffee table, where 2 official envelopes lay. "You came for what you believe is yours. Let's start with what is actually mine." I pushed the first envelope toward him. "This is a certified copy of the Memorandum of Trust and the operating agreement for Palmetto Key Properties, LLC, confirming it as the sole owner of this house." I pushed the second envelope toward him. "And this is a notice of trespass and nuisance. It is already signed. If you raise your voice, threaten anyone in this room, or refuse to leave when asked, Officer O'Rourke will serve it, and you will be arrested." He laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. He reached into his own coat pocket and threw a crumpled photocopy onto the table. "You can't trespass me from my own house. I have Dad's will. He left it to me." May stepped forward, picking up his paper with 2 fingers. "That, Dillon, is an outdated draft of a will. It was superseded." She held up the single protected sheet from her case. "This is the signed and notarized revocation of that wish, which Graham executed, receipted, and filed with my office when he realized the depth of your spending habits." "That's not all," Officer O'Rourke said, her voice cutting in from the doorway. "Mr. Carver, as of 4 p.m. on Friday, a temporary restraining order was issued by the court, petitioned by Nora Finch on behalf of Brianna Carver. You are legally prohibited from attempting to use this address, or Mrs. Carver's name, for any credit applications. It's now a violation of a court order." Dillon's head snapped toward Brianna, his eyes narrowing. "You." "One moment," May said, holding up a tablet computer. "We have one more person who needs to speak with you." She tapped the screen, and a video call connected. The pale, exhausted face of Grant Wilder, the loan officer, filled the tablet. "Mr. Carver," Grant said, his voice tinny and robotic. "This is to confirm that Coastline Metro Bank has formally closed your loan file. Furthermore, based on the fraudulent documentation you provided from Eastport Ledger Works, our internal investigations team has forwarded your file to the state's Financial Crimes Division. Please don't contact us again." The color drained from Dillon's face. He looked cornered. He did the only thing he knew how to do. He roared. "This is my house," he shouted, pointing at the walls, the ceiling. "My father built this. It belongs to me." I did not raise my voice. I simply picked up the television remote from the coffee table. The large screen on the wall, which he thought was off, flickered to life. It was not a television show. It was the Chatham County Digital Cadastral Map. I pressed a button. The map zoomed in, highlighting my property in a bright red border. I pressed another button. The complete, recorded chain of title appeared, line by line, document by document, showing the clear and undeniable transfer, 6 years prior, to the Copperleaf Land Trust. It was a visual lesson in truth. "It's just a map," he screamed. "It's a fact," I said. "And here is the final fact. I reached under the table and pulled out a third, thicker file. The knockout blow. This, I said, opening it, is a fully executed, short-term lease agreement for the upstairs guest suite, entered into by Palmetto Key Properties, LLC, as the landlord. And this, I held up the receipt, is the processed payment for the first month's rent. I let the documents fall to the table. This house is not just an asset, Dylan. It is an active, income-generating business, which you are currently disrupting. You are not a slighted heir. You are a hostile stranger, standing in my place of business, threatening my legal counsel. You have 60 seconds to leave, or you will be trespassing. He stared at the lease. He stared at the check. He finally understood. He had no claim. He had no leverage. He had no home here. He took a step back. Brianna stood up, her voice clear and steady. I'm choosing financial independence. Dylan, I will not be your co-signer, and I will not be your victim. I am done. Dylan looked at May. He looked at Mr. Flynn. He looked at Officer O'Rourke in the doorway, who was just watching, waiting. If you wish to dispute the trust, O'Rourke said, her voice final, your venue is the county courthouse. But for tonight, you are finished here. His associates had already backed out onto the lawn. Dylan stared at me, his eyes filled with a hollow emptiness. He turned, and without another word, he walked out of my house. The front door clicked shut. I walked over and, very deliberately, turned the new deadbolt. The sound was loud in the quiet room. I leaned my forehead against the cool wood of the door, breathing in the scent of polish and safety. I took one long, slow breath, and then I smiled. The house had finally and unequivocally chosen its owner. Thanks so much for listening to my story. I'm curious, where are all of you listening from today? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to connect and hear your thoughts. Please subscribe to Grandma's Family Diary, give this video a like, and show your support by hitting that hype button so more people get to hear this story.